So I flew from Missouri. I got to Atlanta and got to my gate and figured that, well, there's got to be some other missionaries around here. And I saw like a group of suits, and they're all chatting like they're best friends from high school. And I was like, oh, I'm not going to fit in. And so, well, it all turned out to be pretty cool. And we jumped on the plane together and we flew to Bogota. And we got off, and we're all just like giddy kids. I remember seeing the signs, Bienvenido a Bogota, a Colombia. And I didn't understand anything, And we get there and we just kind of like meander and like make our way through customs. Nobody like speaks Spanish really. Make our way through customs. We get outside and there's nobody to receive us. So we're just like standing there, all these gringos. And there was one guy whose parents are from Guatemala. And like after like 15 minutes of us just standing there with all our stuff, he like stops a guy and like in this broken Spanish, because he didn't even speak that well. He's like, hey, can you like call somebody with your phone? And then about another 15 minutes later, some guy showed up and was like, you guys come with me. And so we just followed him. I was like, well, it must be him. And he just took us to a van and we threw all our stuff in and crammed in there like sardines, and they drove us to the MTC. We get to the MTC and it has a big fence around it. And it was like, wow, this is kind of crazy. But then like we were in the MTC for 6 weeks and the food was like good like the first 3. And then you like started getting to you. And we could never really go outside the compound except when we did service on P days. So we'd always rush to grab the broom so we could sweep outside of the compound, because that was like our little taste of freedom. I enjoyed that a lot. Except the Americans, the gringos, we got 1 P day, because the Latins would come in groups of 2 weeks. And they stay with us and we'd make really good friends, and then they go. And then they come, and then they go. And the last P day that we had, or the second to last, when the Latins were all gone, they let us out, the gringos, and we got to go to the Gold Museum at Bogota, which like has all the Nephite stuff they made. And we got to go to a church called Maserate, which is on top of a mountain, a really tall mountain. It's this white church, and we took a gondola up there and we could see the whole city of Bogota. Well, you could actually only see 3/5 of it. It was such a big city. It's like 8 million people or something, huge. And so that was Bogota. I didn't really, that was like my first experience there. I did not speak very much Spanish. They threw us out one day to proselyte, 2 Americans together, and it started to rain. And so we can't speak Spanish, and we're like trying to talk to these people in the rain. And like I'd grabbed my companion's name tag on accident, so my name wasn't even Elder Roberts. But it was so fun. I had so much fun doing that out there. We like offered a girl an umbrella so that we could talk to her, but then like none of our pens would write because everything was wet. But it was like our first experience trying to actually be missionaries in Colombia. It was pretty fun. Well, Colombia has a lot of red tape. It's a bureaucratic system. Their immigration sometimes holds up. My visa, I guess they really like went to town on it, because it expired 2 weeks before my entry date. So like it started 2 weeks before my entry date, so it expired 2 weeks before my entry date. But there were some elders that couldn't get their visas in time, so they had to go to the Provo one. But I think that at the time, that was March, and they changed the age in October. So they were getting huge influxes of missionaries, to the point where some of the rooms were like where they stuffed us in the MTC, like, I mean, they were tiny, and they had like 6 missionaries in there. So like they just put their suitcases on their beds during the day so they could walk around in the room. And they had like, it grew from like 100 to over 200 in a matter of a month. So they had like a lot of big logistic problems. I think that they were just shoving any missionaries out of there that they could, just to free up room at Provo. Because we had 2 guys who went to Ecuador, but they went to they were in our MTC group. So for the most part, it's people who go to Colombia. If they can ship them off to Colombia right away, they will. And then they throw in some the overflow. Anybody else who's going to nearby countries. They like woke us up at like 3 in the morning. And then like we're trying to say goodbye to like our Latin companions, because who knows if we see them again, because they were all from Venezuela. So we were like trying to say goodbye, and then they stuffed us in one of those big vans, but there's so many of us, like I sat in the trunk with 5 other guys, and they drove us to the airport, and we started walking through the, they just like let us off. We made it to our plane. It was just a small biprop. It was like a 45-minute flight. It's not long. And we flew over the mountains. And coming into Medellin, it was really cool, because Medellin sits in a bowl. And so we got to see like this beautiful Andes mountains, and coming in and taking pictures of our city, right? And then we get there, and for the first couple of days, there was like a mission-wide reunion, because Elder Christensen was coming down. So it was really unorthodox, everything we did for a couple of days. We went out tracting with some, like they just paired us with random missionaries. We went out tracting, and we had like 3 hours of sleep, if that, right? And they took us out tracting with more experienced missionaries. And I remember the guy I was with, Elder Sanchez, he was like really just kind of like chill about it. So he like bought himself like an ice cream cone or a popsicle, and we're like going along tracting, and he somebody like was like, yeah, like a pamphlet, and he's like, he was trying to get it out of his bag, but he's got his popsicle, so he just sets it on like the rock right there, the windowsill, and like fishes it out. Just like, it was really normal. Like, meanwhile, I didn't understand anything. That was really the hardest thing. It's like I didn't know what to say to anybody. Like trying to talk. I knew I had to talk to people, but I didn't have anything to say. I did. I just couldn't say it. And then when we finally got our companions and I went out, it was like I felt so tired. I was tired. Because in the MTC, you just sit. You don't even measure time by hours. You measure time by meals. That's how you measure time in the MTC. And then it's just sitting all day. So you're out of shape anyways. I don't care how much volleyball you play in the morning. Like, it doesn't matter. But I went to my area, and my area was like a steep part of the mountain, just nestled into the side. So anywhere we went, it was up and down hills, very steep. And I remember after like 3 days, I was just like, I'm so tired. I remember these distances, like to certain houses, seemed super long. And then like after I'd been in that area like 3 months or something like that, I realized it was only like 5 minutes away. Not even that. But the first couple of days, it was hard. Just the language barrier. I got lucky. My companion spoke English. He's from Mexico, and he spoke English pretty well. If you aren't like resilient, or if you're not ready to like really, really get on your knees and pray a lot, it's hard, because it can be a complete culture shock. It wasn't so much a culture shock for me, Medellin. I just kind of took it in stride, but like the mission itself and like all the work that goes into it is really hard to assimilate. I remember I was walking down to our house one night, and I was like, this is so hard. And then I remembered like one of my friends, he wasn't a Mormon, but he went to my farewell talk. Before I left, he said, you're one of the most adaptable people I know. You'll be fine. I like thought about that. Like that night I was walking down to the house, I thought about that for a second. And the fact that he believed in me, that I could do it, like it made me want to believe that too. And so, like, just kind of in that moment, I kind of like, put my foot down. I was like, thousands have done it before me, and I can be one of them. And I kind of took that step, like I believed in myself. And all of us, every missionary that goes out, somebody, is like, you're going to be a great missionary. You're going to be able to do it. There's plenty of words of advice that come through, But it's like to actually believe that. You have to choose it, like to believe that you can do it. Because unless you do that, it's just always going to be too much. And the language barrier, once I decided that, I really decided, I can conquer this language. It moved a lot slower than I wish. And my biggest thing was I read the scriptures in English. because I didn't understand them in Spanish. I couldn't read them. My word mission leader one day, he said, you read in English, you're never going to learn Spanish. And I was like, what's this guy talking about? You know, it's kind of a little prideful about it. But then I think it was the next morning, I just like opened up my scriptures to do personal study, and it was like, he's right. And so I closed my quad, I set off the side, and I never used it for personal study again, just for the reference. But I opened up my Spanish Book of Mormon, and I just started reading. Like, I mean, it was like reading just gibberish. Just sounding the words out, because it's a phonetic language, and sounding it out. And I didn't understand anything. I made it about like half a chapter. But I did that, and then it was weird because all of a sudden, like, you'd hit a word, and all of a sudden it'd make sense. Like, you'd read it and you like knew what it meant. It was like you were downloading Spanish from somewhere. But really, that's what it was. Reading the Book of Mormon in Spanish just like opened my mind. La Mission Medellin, it's like I served with the first president of that mission. It was recently formed from two neighboring missions. Barranquilla, which covers the Caribbean coast of Colombia, and then Cali, which is the Pacific coast. Like, because Panama's right there as a divider between the two. Medellin is interesting because it has like a lot of different like topography and like geography and culture actually within the mission. So there's kind of three centers of the mission. They were kind of just like in a belt, like straight up and down. There was the coast, there was Medellin, which was in the mountains, and then further south there was a place called El Eje Cafetero, which means the coffee axle, which is where Colombia produces a lot of their coffee. And it's a smaller belt of three cities down there. They're cities. Like, I mean, in America we live with a lot of space, right? In South America, not so much. Even though they have a lot of space, they congregate in the cities. So Medellin was 2-3 million people crammed in like a very, very tiny valley. And then the other cities in El Eje Cafetero, down south, they were cities as well. One was built on top of a mountain, so it just covered the peak. There was obviously neighboring towns that are a little bit smaller, but smaller meaning, you know, a couple 100,000. And then there was like the furthest south area that we would go before we hit Mission Cali was Armenia. And they had like some smaller, like more agricultural towns. But by America's standards, at least by my standards, since I grew up in a town of 60,000 people, like, they were all cities. Even in the coast where I served a lot, they're big cities. Even if like some of the areas are just kind of like neighborhoods, they're part of cities. And you can go outside. Like, I did go outside when I was in the coast. I visited, you know, a place called Santa Rosa, which was like, you know, 2 hours away. It was just huts. But for the most part, the church isn't strong enough in Colombia to expand to the smaller areas. So it was almost all concentrated in cities. The weather, we think about, you know, South America, and we're like, it's hot, right? It's by the equator. Medellin's like 6 degrees from the equator. But it's sitting in the Andes Mountains. So it's like over 2,000 feet or something. It's high up, like really high up. I think it may have been like 2,000 meters. And it's sitting high in the air, so high that it's called the City of Eternal Spring. They actually have that like in Hollywood lettering on the side of the mountain. So it sits at a balmy like 72 year-round. Sun rises at 6, sets at 6. Sometimes it gets a little bit rainy. You'll have like a month or two where it just like rains a lot. And then you'll have some like slightly hotter. But the people in Medellin can't handle like temperature changes. Like, it goes down like 4 degrees, they're like, it's freezing. And then you go up like 4 degrees and like, it's so hot. And they just can't handle it. But in the coast, you go down out of the mountains, and you're in like, it's like the flat coastline, the Caribbean coast, and that's hot. That's really, really hot. That's like, it's really humid. If you've ever been to the Midwest in the summer, that's what it feels like. But the sun's a lot stronger, so it just kind of bakes. And then there is another section of the mission that I forgot to mention called El Choco. And that's like coming straight down from Panama. You enter a jungle, and it's in the middle of that jungle, El Choco. And yeah, there's cities as well there, but they're very like poor cities. They don't have a lot of development, and it's the wettest place on earth. I mean, literally the wettest place on earth. It rains every day. To shower, they just have big open buckets on the roofs, and it just catches the rainwater. So if it doesn't rain, you don't have any water, but that never happens. So pretty consistent. Whatever it is, it's consistent at it. Colombia is kind of strange because it's very regionalistic. Like, its departments, or like its states, its cities differ from each other, but they really, really identify by department, to the point where they'll have food in one department or one part of the country that you can't get in the other part. Like, I served my whole mission in Medellin, like the actual city, or in the coast. And there was food that I'd eat when I was in the coast that I would not eat when I was in Medellin, and vice versa. Because they're different people. In Medellin, they have this, it's pretty, like, they feed you a lot of lentils. They feed you a lot of lentejas, a lot of rice. A lot of times you'll get like rice, like chicken. And they never give you water, ever. They give you juice, which is the best thing that's ever happened to me. They give you amazing juice there. Since like Colombia's like the land bountiful, everything grows there except like really cold berries, right? Berries that grow like in Canada. So it's really, really cheap, and they just make juice all the time. That's what's with every meal. And that's like what was my favorite part. And they make it fresh. Like, they don't use juicers. I learned how to use a blender there. That's how they make everything. So in Medellin, they'll give you like a juice. The typical platters call this, it's like a bandeja. It's a platter. Bandeja paisa. So the paisa platter. Paisa is like, it's the name of the people. Like, we'll say like the north. The northeast, we'll call them Yankees, right? That's just like the name of the people that live in Medellin. They're called paisa. So they have the paisa platter. And it will take like a plantain, a ripe plantain, and they'll fry it. Rice, beans, avocado, a fried egg, and this thing called chicharrón, which is basically a giant strip of bacon that they deep fry. I know, it's good. And sometimes like sausages, like chorizo, it's like a bratwurst kind of thing. But that's like the bandeja paisa. And they'll put that like just a big platter in front of you. And that's like the typical thing out there. And then also in Medellin, they have these things called arepas, which are like tortillas, but they're like thicker. They're not thin like tortillas. They're just corn made into like a patty, and they make them ad nauseum. Like for breakfast, everybody has these like little things that, like, it's just a little circle thing with holes in it, and you just stick it over the stove, and you cook your arepa in the morning, and then you like put butter on it and like tomatoes, and they have like really weird cheese there. It's all white. They don't like make yellow cheese. So they just like have this, they call it quesito, like little cheese. But it's kind of like feta, but not. Like, it's like a feta mozzarella mix. I don't know how they make it or where to find it else in the world. But then I'd stick that on there with tomatoes. It's like a perfect breakfast meal. Or they'll like scramble a ton of eggs and they'll stick it on the arepa, and you'll eat that. Or like at some like the fast food places, they'll stuff it. They'll cut the arepa open and they'll stuff it with meat, and corn and some other stuff. So that was like Medellin. Medellin's food was pretty good, but the best food in the whole mission was in the coast. So in the coast, they feed you different stuff. They make, first of all, it's called arroz con coco, which is like rice with cocoa, like with coconut. I'm not sure how they make it, whether they just cook it in like the juice or if they like use like real coconut, like meat and stuff like that. But it's like sweet rice, and it's so good. And then they have different fruits down there, so they like make you different fruits. One of them's like a guava, you know, we all think about it as pink. Well, they have one that's like green and white. And then they'll make you a juice because it grows everywhere. So they'll just pick it off the tree and make you a juice. And then they make these things called patacones, which are, they take plantain, but it's not ripe. It's green. And then they'll cut it open and they'll fry it. Like they'll fry it a little bit and then they'll pull it out and they'll smash it. Or they'll cut it up and like fry bits of it, and then they'll pull those out and they'll smash them. And so like plasters out, and then they refry that, and they become like chips. And they're incredible. Patacones, they're like my favorite. You put a little bit of salt on them, or guacamole, and it's like the best. And then my favorite thing that they do in the coast is they take a whole fish, like eyeball, you know, fins and all, and they just deep fry it. The whole thing. And it's so good. Like fish fins, deep fried fish fins, they're like chips. They're really good. And like I went to like a house way out in the middle of nowhere in the coast, and she was like just making like a fire, like they had like a concrete like camp stove looking thing, and she was just making a fire below it to cook our meal. And they just had this like two fish sitting like this kind of dirty bloody water. I was like, I don't know what's happening here. And she just like pulled out a bunch of oil and fried it, and that was the best fish I've ever had. It takes a lot of work to eat because you have to get through everything, but it was so good. And then just the fruit. The fruit's amazing. Like, there's this one place where this guy would walk by my house every day saying, papaya, papaya, a mil, a mil, a mil. And so he'd sell a papaya for 50 cents. So you'd buy a papaya. And so you just cut it up, and I'd buy like a watermelon for like $3. Like a big good watermelon. I'd just eat that for like a couple of weeks. Or I'd buy mangoes. Or when in the coast, mango trees are like oak trees. They just grow everywhere. They just fall off the trees. You can't even gather them all. So mangoes are dirt cheap. And you can just eat a mango wherever. And they're so good because they ripen on the tree. And then they have weird fruit. Like there's this one called mamon. It's like a green grape. But you don't like eat it. You like take it and then you like break it and it pops open. Like it bursts the skin, and then it has a seed on the inside with all like the fruit that's like around it, and then you just suck it. And you clean the seed off and you spit the seed out, and then you go on to the next one. Some really good fruit. That was my favorite part. You could get any good fruit there. In the coast, they have like some cheese that it was one of those things that you couldn't get. Like you could get in Medellin, but for like huge prices. It was really expensive. It's called queso costeño, like coast cheese. And I've seen people like out in the square. They just have like a scale, like an old scale, and just like a block of cheese. I mean, like this big, just sitting out there in the heat. It's hot, and the thing doesn't melt. It doesn't melt. Doesn't even like change shape. It squeaks when you eat it, like you're eating. It's like on your teeth. But it was like really good cheese. I think they made it just from the pure cream. Like they didn't even bother with the milk. But it was like you could only really get it in the coast because of missionaries. We couldn't really afford it in Medellin. And like they'd make soups with it. It's like one called Monte de Queso. And it's like this cream of something soup, but it has all these chunks of cheese in it. Queso costeño. So you're like fishing them out. It squeaks. Colombia has, especially the Mission Medellin, has such different dialects. It's like depending on where you start your mission, that's how you'll speak. Like it's ridiculous how different they are. So in Medellin, they like have a very like sing-songy accent, and the guys talk different from the girls. So like the guys be like, "Hey, ¿qué pues escucho? ¿Qué haces por aquí? Tengo que ir a trabajar." They have like this like, and then the girls like they have like that same like rhythm, but it's like the most beautiful thing you'll ever hear. And they're like, "De cuando viene por acá, le vamos a cocinar la cena." And it's just like, oh, it's just so cool. I love it. And then you go to the coast, and the coast, they talk completely different. Completely different. They don't say their S's. And they cut all their words short. So in like Medellin, they'll say, "¿Cómo está?" And the coast say, "¿Cómo está?" And it's like really fast. And so like when I switched like areas from Medellin to the coast, I didn't understand for a week. Like I could speak Spanish in Medellin, and then I went to the coast. Like a week, I could not understand a single word. It was so bad. And they use like different jerga, like different slang in each of the places, so you like pick it up. And like something that's really bad in one place isn't bad in the other. And then something that's really bad there is like perfectly fine over there. That's just the dynamics of the language are crazy. I love the accents. I never really doubted my testimony. I had a testimony always. And I received a testimony in the Book of Mormon when I was 14 years old. Richard G. Scott came to my stake to reorganize it, which, you know, that was like the first time I'd seen an apostle in person. And so it was pretty special. And he made a promise that if we would read the Book of Mormon, between that stake conference and the next one in 6 months, we would gain a testimony that it was true. And I was super determined. I was like, it's prophetic or an apostolic promise. And then I didn't do anything for 3 months. But then after that, I really sat down and began to read the Book of Mormon, and it was like just like a sunrise. And after I finished in time, there was a testimony meeting like a week or two later, and as I listened to the testimonies, it was like they were saying stuff that they knew was true. And as I listened, I realized that I knew that the Book of Mormon was true. And I said it, and I like solidified my testimony. But I wasn't that like continually faithful in reading it until like I got to my, like a little bit before my mission, I decided to really read the Book of Mormon again. And it was through like some of those times when I made the point to read it every night, combined with Institute, that I began to receive kind of like basic testimonies, specifically a testimony of prayer that carried me through the mission. Because I hit a rough patch right before I left. It was really hard for me. And I attended Institute, and I read and I prayed, even though I didn't really feel like doing any of those things. I didn't get any answers. But then one night, after a week of praying, I was reading my Book of Mormon, and I prayed again. But it was like more organic. I guess I was more humble that time. And I actually got my answer. And that was like the first time I felt that spirit that comes from praying. And that, like when I made it to the mission field, all of a sudden everything was hard. And it was because I'd like obeyed the commandments beforehand that I was able to endure that. That prayer was really important for me. We often like think about how we're called to certain missions, and we're like, it's by a prophet of God. It's God's will that I go to this mission, right? He sent me here. It's divine. But a lot of times, especially pre-mission, we don't think about that actually the way it happens in the mission, but it does. It's like the same way it happens. There's a servant of God who prays about where we should go. And the Lord tells him, just like when we were called to the mission, like every transfer. A lot of times the missionaries will focus just like so much on like, why am I supposed to be here? Who am I supposed to help? When really, a lot of times the person who needs your help is your companion. Like, your companion is a child of God as well. He's got a lot of responsibility placed upon him, just like we do. Because the Lord will expect this generation to carry his church, into the millennium. And so a lot of times I just found that people would be focusing, man, I just want to help people. I just can't, I'm not getting along with their companion. But never stop to think about like what they could do for their companion, but like actually like them. Just not just like, oh, my companion is kind of a drag, so we need some help. But it's like really cherish that relationship. Some of my best friends are people I served with. Whether I was their zone leader, whether I was their companion. One time in particular, when I got my transfer call, and immediately I knew why I was going. I knew I was going for my companion, the person I would be companions with. And I wanted to just be God's hand to him. And that's what I prayed for. And that's what I was able to do because I like looked for it, I miss my companion so much. A lot of times, missionaries won't do companionship inventory because they're like, I don't like to fight with them, so I just know the companionship inventory. I was like, well, if you're fighting, then you're not doing it right. So what if he won't budge? You budge. Like, give way. Frankly, a companionship's like practice for marriage. You gotta learn how to exist jointly with somebody. A lot of times, missionaries didn't talk, or at least the elders, didn't talk about their problems. They're going to try to work things out and become like the best friends and, united in God's purpose, because they really weren't concerned with becoming friends. But that, for me, made all the difference in my mission. Like, trying to be friends with them, trying to, like, get along because I loved them. Not because I should, but because I loved them for real, because I cared about them and I wanted them to be happy and I wanted them to like being with me. I honestly would say that just my work with other missionaries, what they taught me and what I taught them, how we helped each other, I think that was probably my mission. I think I helped far. I think the most people I helped were missionaries out of any other group. That I could help them come closer to Christ. Especially when I got the opportunity to lead them. And I felt that great responsibility, not because of my title, but because I had sheep. I was their pastor. I was their shepherd. And I wanted to take care of them because I loved them. And I just encourage like any missionary who goes out there, just to remember that your first sheep is the one that's placed at your side. If you can't care for that one, you'll never be able to care for more. It was like this family in the coast where I lived. The brother had suffered a stroke, and so like half his body didn't work. We were in Cerete, which was like not that big. And then you'd have to catch a Jeep, had 30 minutes out of town to San Carlos. And then from San Carlos, you have to like ride a motorcycle, another 30 minutes or 45 minutes to Santa Rosa, where these people lived in like a thatch hut. And he was at church every Sunday. And so his little brother and little sister wanted to come to church because they like followed his example, especially after their mom died. My companion and I, we'd hop in the Jeep. They wait for it to fill up, and then we head out to San Carlos. The road to San Carlos has potholes the size of a small house. It's not an exaggeration. Like the whole Jeep would go down and then come back up. I do not know how you let a pothole get that big, but they did. And so sometimes if the Jeep was like full or there were like women that needed a seat, they drop the tailgate, and we just stand on the back, holding on. So we'd fly down the highway, just standing on the tailgate and holding on to the rails up top. It was really fun. And then we go down, we go all the way to San Carlos. When we get to San Carlos, we'd catch a motorcycle, or the little brother would come grab us on his motorcycle, and then all three of us would jam onto that motorcycle and take the back one, and you just kind of like hold your feet off the ground. And then we just ride down these. It was a really beautiful country road. Like, big trucks had made huge potholes when it was like waves, and then it like go into gravel. And then we had to cross a couple streams, and like the motorcycle's like 100 cc's, so it can't get up the hill with all three of us on it. So like sometimes I'd have to get off, and he'd like go up, and then I'd follow. It was beautiful countryside, beautiful, absolutely gorgeous. And like one time we were going, we hear this. We're like, what is that? And all of a sudden, like, the rain washes in, and it's like huge pellets, and it's like getting punched in the face. And so like I'm like protecting my books. I don't care about me. I just care about my scriptures. I care about, my Book of Mormon. That's what I don't want to get wet. And so he's like, should I stop? We're like, no, just keep going, get to the house. And so he like goes as fast as he can. We like get there, we like run up to his house. We're soaked. And so we stay there. The roof's leaking. We teach his family. And then when we get ready to go back, we jump on his motorcycle. The rain's ended, and we go back, and we get to the first stream, and it's a torrent. And we're like, well, what do we do? There's just people on both sides on motorcycles waiting. And like we had other appointments, but we had no cell service. So we just like waited. And then he like put one of us on there and was like, all right, ready? Like flew across it and like made it across, and then came back for the other one. And so then we were like riding along, and we get to the next one, and he's like, nah, this is too deep for me. I'm going to go try to find another way around. So you guys just go ahead and cross here. So we like took our shoes off and like held them up and like walked across the river to get to the other side. And then he came in, and then we just rode like our bare feet the rest of the way. I was really tired that day. But they ended up getting baptized. That was like a really cool experience, because they were definitely the poorest people I ever taught. And they would come to church, all three of them, on the motorcycle. That was really cool, just because like the oldest brother, he like introduced his younger siblings to the gospel. His mom had died, he'd had a stroke, and the guy never stopped smiling. That was just really cool to me. I served in one stake, the place where I began as a zone leader. And in our branch, there's the branch president and then also the district president, because it wasn't a stake, it was a district. A district president lived there also. And we became best friends with both of them. And I remember running around, like, just helping this president out, because he was pretty new. He'd only been there about a month, with everything that he needed. And in spite of everything that this man had to do, like, he always had a smile on his face. Like, despite all the problems in the branch, despite everybody, vying for his attention, he just like never stopped smiling. And like I was really, really touched by that, like by his like dedication to it. And that was my favorite spot in the whole mission. All the members like worked together. We had like weekly meetings with the district president. We were able to rescue over 60 people in that zone. Like, it was just like cool to see like the members and the missionaries like working together for real. Like, that was where I understood what it meant to hasten the work. And it was just completely through this just open, we're on the same team, we're on the same page, we like each other relationship with members and missionaries. Like, we're doing the same thing We're working for the same purpose. It was the best time of my life there. Don't think because you're going to South America that it's going to be warm all the time. That's an important thing to do. Sometimes you might get called into the higher mountain regions, and it gets chilly. Read the Book of Mormon. I really learned to study. I didn't really learn how to study the Book of Mormon until like the last 4 or 5 months of my mission. In Medellin, you'll see stuff that you're not fond of. You'll see a culture that you'll butt heads with. But that does not and should not in any way impede your ability to love them. Those people work very hard. They, a lot of times, are not given much. But they're a good people. Don't run down the hills. I did that. Bad mistake. Get good thick socks and orthotics. There's no bikes or cars. Try the arepa con queso. It's good. Memorize the neighborhoods. If you're serving in Medellin, the city, memorize the neighborhoods. That will be one of the best contacting tools you have. Just say, oh bro, where are you from? Oh, I'm like from this part. Oh yeah, that's right by this. I know the place. Oh really? It's amazing. Like, it doesn't work in the coast because they don't have streets. They don't have addresses. But in Medellin, it's thebomb.com. And I just say I have a lot of fun with it. Enjoy the beauty of Medellin and look around at it a lot. The more you pay attention to how beautiful that world is, the more you can really appreciate who you're working for.